Can you be your authentic self and be successful as a copywriter? Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing Copywriting Tips. There are some significant risks of being your authentic self and benefits as well. Let's first talk about those risks. First off, if your authentic self doesn't align with your target audience, it is possible you will repel them and they won't be motivated or influenced by your writing. Sometimes being your authentic self, people don't like you. I often fear being my authentic self outside of my client base because the general public gets confused by the messages that I convey. There are times where I'll share an idea or concept as a result of what I believe is being asked for advice, and the other person is completely offended. So, for example, when I say businesses don't pay taxes, instead, the business passes their expenses along to customers or reduces the salaries that they pay employees. People get upset. They're like, well, businesses should pay taxes. Well, again, there's concepts that require a little bit more explanation. And if I'm not careful, being my authentic self puts the listener in a bad position and they jump to a conclusion. Now, of course, part of copywriting is writing to a specific audience. So if you find an audience where your authentic self works well, then you're not going to have any problems. You being your authentic self, you could hurt someone else's feelings, like I just described there, but also your feelings might get hurt because you are being who you can be best. One of the things about being your authentic self is just being you. You don't have to put up a front. You don't have to spend extra energy or time to be someone else. You can simply write as you are, using the fundamentals of copywriting, using persuasion, setting up the structure correctly, and really speaking from the heart. That actually is very powerful when it comes to copywriting. If you have an audience match, if you are consistent and being yourself, it's easy to be consistent. But again, overall, you'll be more vulnerable. Overall, you might lose control of how others see you because you might overshare. But ultimately, being your authentic self in copy has many, many benefits. Now, let's go over the first benefit. If you find an audience that matches, so my audience tends to be high net worth individuals, highly affluent individuals, people who have very high incomes, top 10% incomes, and people who have a little bit different way of looking at the world. So, for example, if they hear a government person say, this is the way it is, they will go do the homework and find out which way it really is. They don't believe something just because authority says it. So they tend to be a little bit skeptical. Now, your audience could be different. I've met individuals that are very, what you might call more emotionally based. See, I'm more logically based, and they're more emotionally based. And they're going to say, the beautiful sky makes me feel that it's time to move forward and go outside. And they're going to talk in more descriptive language. I don't tend to talk in descriptive language using all five senses. I should, because that makes for better copy, but it's a process I'll have to move forward. When you are authentic with who you are, it's easier to write, but you're going to build relationships that are easier to maintain. So what are some places you might want to be very authentic about your copy? Well, taking a position in copy or in your day-to-day business helps you be something for someone specific. So when I'm on YouTube, I basically tell YouTube that I am not targeting 18 and younger, because if somebody's 18 and younger, my advice to them about copywriting, my advice to them about business is simply just start anywhere. Pick up a Gary Halbert program or pick up one of these programs from AWAI and just simply go through the program. Bob Bly has some great copywriting books. Simply just get the book and start at the first page. Don't get 5 books. Get one book, start on the first page, and just start practicing. Now, again, a lot of folks want to go on the internet. They want to do a video. They want to do a TikTok. They want to do whatever's the latest and greatest. My experience on the internet since 1989 has been that there's platforms that come and go, and these platforms are like mailing lists. They'll work for a while, but then eventually they'll stop working on you. And as long as you're testing them against what you know to be working and you're building up a catalog of what works, then you'll get the results. Now, you may find that being your authentic self, now a lot of people don't know who they really are, so it does require a little bit of soul searching. Now, depending on your product, you can take the client on the journey with that. But ultimately, once you know who you are to this specific audience, it's really good to write out a profile. You're really going to have maybe the 3 to 5 things that you always touch on. So in my case, I always talk on assets that cash flow. I have enough evidence to know that if you buy an asset that can pay for itself, including the cost of maintenance, including everything associated with owning that asset, then that's a better investment than buying a liability. Now, that's an oversimplification, but if I wrote that in a sentence on a board when I'm talking or writing for an investment newsletter, there are 2 or 3 tenets that are specific to the piece you're writing, but there's a wide range of tenets, maybe 100 top tips that are relevant to the area and the audience that you're writing to. If you have a strong alignment in that authentic self, then you'll be more likely to be able to write without fatigue, to be able to write clearly. Let's talk about, I've talked about some of the risks. We talked about some of the benefits. Let's talk about how to discover your authentic self. Because a lot of times I feel like the world around us challenges who we are. And we see a lot of identity politics. We see a lot of social pressure to make you be a certain person. I personally have a difficult time being someone for someone else. If I kind of what they call front, if I meet somebody and I try to be someone I'm not, it actually gives me digestive problems. It gives me gas. It's kind of a weird situation. That's probably too much information, but ultimately, if I'm who I am, if I'm just relaxed and I be my own person and I think and make my own decisions, all those risk factors will happen and it's uncomfortable. But it's not so uncomfortable that I'm not able to deliver value to that small and specific audience that I work with. Now, how did I find my authentic self? And we work with a lot of clients in coaching on this. Well, first off, it doesn't matter how I did it. I'm going to give you a handful of ways that you can find your authentic self. And it starts with being willing to ask the question of other people, what do I do best? Now, I've invested in a full executive psychological evaluation. I basically took a physical evaluation and a psychological evaluation. Now, where did I get the idea to do that? Well, there was a Brian Tracy program a long time ago that talked about how to find your authentic self, how to find yourself and understand your strengths and weaknesses and how to live the executive life. And I said, well, I want to be an executive. So I didn't do it right away, but I started taking personality tests. I started taking Strength Finder, for example, is one area. There's a Colby report. But I basically asked experts to assess who I was based on some means and measure, and I came up with a binder. And I'm big on putting stuff in binders because I can take that binder out and I can say, does this really describe me? And if it describes me, I can work within those contexts because you might not know how to describe yourself. But again, we have so many distractions in the world. Sometimes it just takes sitting down and thinking about where you want to be. Now, in copywriting, we very often have to write in different personas, and we don't want to write in personas that conflict with who we are. So I wouldn't do very good writing a weight loss campaign that talks about not eating cake and not eating ice cream and not eating cheesecake, because part of who I am is that I enjoy those things. Now, I enjoy very small portions of them. I don't eat as much as I used to, but it would be a push to write as the woman and to write against certain sweets, basically taking an abstinence approach and writing a weight loss pitch. But I could write a weight loss pitch that says, hey, exercise is a waste of your time. Why not get outside and do productive activities? Let's adjust the nutritional value of our food. Let's cut out harmful foods, or at least significantly reduce it. I could write on that level. So does that make sense? You're going to use personality tests. You're going to use the different types of assessments. You might even do an executive level psychological evaluation. It took 3 days to do this evaluation. It was extremely revealing. But ultimately, what you're going to find out is that you have a number of strengths and weaknesses, and those all together compose who you really are. And if you write within those constraints, you will grow. Now, you might want to improve on your weaknesses and stuff. That's peak performance. If you're in a coaching program, we can talk about the peak performance side. What else can you do to create and cultivate your authentic self? Because again, your authentic self is the foundation of your voice. It's a lot easier to be who you are than to be somebody else. And ultimately, you can build on who you are as a connection for authentic relationships with your clients. So how about taking a vacation from social media? I have found out, again, I've been on the internet for a long time, social media is a cesspool of idiots. Now, if you're serving a general audience and there's a message board or a Reddit list or a Facebook group that's specific to your target audience, you will have a better tolerance for that than perhaps I would or somebody else would. See, I almost speak like an elitist or a... like I work with $1 million plus clients. If you're a startup, you get your first customer. I have a program about getting your first copywriting client. I don't want you to be in a coaching program unless you've got at least your first copywriting client. Because if you haven't got your first copywriting client, you don't have the dedication and persistence necessary to get your second client. And of course, if you've got a first client, you could do the same thing you did to get your second client. But I digress. Take a break from social media. Take a break from the internet. Take a break from writing only long enough on the writing side and in the writing on the computer side, only long enough for you to start collecting your thoughts and ideas. How do you collect your thoughts and ideas? Where you use a journal. So you take out a pen and paper and you write in a journal rather than getting on the internet and just spouting out stuff on social media. Rather than just throwing ideas off the top of the head, you're going to self-reflect into what it is that you're saying. And that's what I'm doing when I'm doing these podcasts. I'm really trying to convey complex ideas in as simple a term as possible for existing copywriters who have a few clients under their belt and want to build this into a full-time income, want to build this into a marketing agency, or start moving towards more complex and more lucrative business development opportunities. Again, the journal is a lot of good journaling methods. Lee Miltier has a great journaling method where you write about your aspirations, you write about your success of the day, and you kind of reflect and kind of self-analyze, not critically, but often to see where those secret strengths lie and help you kind of find who you are, that connection with yourself. Another thing you can do is kind of challenge those things that you want to be in the future. What does your future self look like? And what you should be in the future. See, a lot of times our internal conflicts and beliefs limit our ability to make quality decisions and deliver relevant copy to our clients. So I write copy for wealthy individuals. Now, I'm not selling investment programs. I'm selling both the mindset and the wealth retention. And often I hear folks say, I'll say, hey, get a loan to buy something rather than using your own money, partner with the bank. Okay. A lot of the objection to that is, well, I've got the money. I don't want the extra hassle. I'm just going to pay cash. My reply to that is, if you're paying cash, you're putting out money rather than circulating money and bringing it back. See, that concept I shared there, I can share that in a 12-page narrative. I can share it with stories of clients. I can share it in so many different ways. But I've built a framework based on both my personality and my message for a specific audience. Now, if I say that to somebody who only's got $20 in their pocket and they want to buy a pack of gum, then you wouldn't go get a loan for a pack of gum. You just buy it. But if I'm talking with somebody who has $2 million in their pocket and they want to go and buy a piece of land and they just going to pay cash for the land, I can show them a strategy where they can use the $2 million to leverage and partner with a bank so that they keep their $2 million and basically get the land paid for by the interest that the bank will pay them on the $2 million. So again, you're going to look at what you should be in the future, what you want to be in the future, and then you're going to build out those little hooks that are aligned to, I don't want to say your belief system, because you do have to base it in fact. Like, should you believe it to be a certain way? Well, let's figure that out. Let's figure out if that is actually the truth. You want to be a successful copywriter. What would that mean in your life? So again, we're journaling, we're taking notes on our life, we're on purpose reducing stimulation. You're not watching TV. Maybe you're sitting down with your journal, having a cup of tea, just relaxing. Maybe you took a nap outside in a hammock just to now it looks like you're being lazy, but ultimately it's simply a way of allowing you to get in touch with yourself. We are so afraid at times to get in touch with who we are. And again, the risks are there. What will people think of me if I say what I really mean? Now, again, we do have what they call cancel culture. But again, if you don't care, they can't cancel you. So you talk about Kid Rock, for example. Kid Rock, when asked why is it that nobody can cancel him, because people tried, he just said, I don't care. I do what I want to do. I enjoy what I want to enjoy. And ultimately, I don't care what other people say. Dan Kennedy talks about in The Millionaire Mindset to be immune to criticism. You can do that best when you know who you are and you practice being your authentic self. But you go further. You build out the tenets necessary that if you need to take on a different persona for a copywriting project, you're not going too far away about who you are. What else can you do to get an idea of who you are, what you are? One thing that I learned from a very wealthy individual that I find fascinating is to go places and ask questions and listen carefully to the other person's response and really just take your ego and set it aside. You could be the most accomplished individual in the world. You could have had all these successes with clients. You could have been a top achiever in your business. And rather than saying any of that, you kind of show up anonymously at a networking event or an activity. And when they ask you who you are, what do, you give them the USP. That's fine. But you ask a question of the other person. And you focus on not discovering who you are, but discovering who other people are to build up that comparison and contrast. So instead of saying, hey, I'm great, you find out what's great about other people. And then when you reflect, you can say, well, is that also something about me? It's a weird concept because we're all interacting with each other all the time. To simply go out and just see other people as they are, or help other people understand who they are by asking them questions. And how do you feel about that? Why is that important to you? This works incredibly well when you do it with clients. So show up at your client's trade show. So your target audience, show up at their trade show and just get to know people. And the last point I want to give you that helps you find your authentic self is to volunteer. I know we're very busy and we don't necessarily have the time. I personally find spending a lot of time in solitude helps me discover who I am. Listening to soft music and doing some manual labor outside helps me discover who I am. But also going out and helping others in a way that's not related to work, not related to copywriting, just connecting and listening to other people's stories. You very often find out a lot more about who you are. And here's why this works. So if you go volunteer to feed the homeless, for example, and you're bored doing it, and you just, you're grinding through it because some dude on a podcast suggested it as a way to discover who you are, and you reflect on that moment, you're going to realize that, there's no judgment here. You're going to realize that that's not something for you. Now you go volunteer in a garden, for example, and you're gardening and you're getting all dirty and sweaty, and it's just a bad day. You got sunburn. That's not for you. But then you go volunteer for SCORE or business meeting or something like that, and you're mentoring young adults and you're helping them with their new business ideas, and you find it exciting and joyful. This is how you find your authentic self. So again, I found my authentic self through kind of a more, and this is something you're going to work on forever, but ultimately through a more assessment-based approach. And then the journaling has been super helpful for me. I have a couple programs on journaling you might want to look into. But you may find it in these other ways. But it all has to do with stepping away from who you are, looking at yourself from outside eyes, even inviting others to look at you. Criticism is not bad. Sometimes your worst enemies has the most accurate picture of who you are, even though you don't have to take it personally. But ultimately, in the long run, if you are writing within the construction of your authentic self, what is true in your heart, you'll be able to write more passionately. You'll be able to write with more description. You'll be able to write with more durability and endurance, and your writing will persuade others. It's like a religious testimonial. You can speak from the heart about your experiences and what you found and why it's so important without talking about you, because that's another thing that we need to do. You need to be able to reflect your personality and copy without speaking about you specifically. You want to speak through your client's voice, your customer's voice. Anyway, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. If this is something you want me to explore a little bit more, there are two avenues that we can take. One avenue is around the peak performance, where you find out your strengths and unique abilities, and we drive those forward to success in copywriting and marketing. Or how do we find that voice of who you are to your target audience and what values you can deliver, that list of tenets, so that you can be a consistent presentation in front of those individuals and have that persuasion that they need in order to take action with what you have to offer. If you have any questions about what I've covered today, you can visit www.adbriefing.co.uk. Simply go to the contact page, ask your question. I'd love to hear from you. If you're seeing this on a YouTube or BitChute or one of these other platforms out there, simply go down to the comments and share your comments, questions, or even concerns about what I've shared today. I would love to hear from you, and be sure to like and subscribe because we are building quite a community out there around the concepts. But again, what I share, like I just said, my authentic self isn't for everybody, just like your authentic self isn't for everybody, and that's okay. You can still be a successful copywriter. For God's sakes, Bob Bly is like very, very technical. And then there's other copywriters that are very, very esoteric and very, there's like a copywriter for every personality type in the world, and it's necessary. And that's why this is such a valuable place to be. So again, if you have any questions about copywriting or the approaches of peak performance or the approach of authentic voice, certainly visit us and ask the questions. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, where we help copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals persuade with words that sell.